Right, cool.
I loved how you made that differentiation between like influencing when we were talking about that and content creation, because that's a space that I'm seeing that a lot more in bios now than
Content creator.
Because the thing also with content creation is that if you create content, you're automatically a content creator. You can't just come out the gate and be I'm an influencer.
Exactly.
Who told you that?
Exactly.
But anyway, I don't want to go.
We're influencer
But
Can I catch you, man? It doesn't know you for big can I catch it? Can I catch you, man? Savu catch you as the focus on my potato. Can I catch you, man? Stop all and that's only passing a shot in my own. We got a Galilei shot. We pull them tattoo and you're always a lot.
Sanbonani dumelang abusheni. Hello. Goeiemorgen. Da you are with the Digital Dyans, and of course we are joined by our special guest today. Let's start off, of course, with you. How are you, Sissy?
I'm great, thank you. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
As usual, please do follow us on all the social networks. We are on Facebook, we are on Twitter, we are on YouTube, we are on Sprout for the easy listeners. If you just want to listen, I've heard a few people say that they've been able to grab a few of the gems and the nuggets, and those are all made possible, of course, through the communication we have. This is a knowledge sharing platform, and I share it with none other than
Siya. Hello, we're back. Sanele.
Of course, I promise you they're going to be much more excited as they hear what the topic is about. I think for me, it's such an exciting topic. There's a lot of misconception around PR.
A lot.
What is it and what is it not?
Okay, so PR in its simplest form, PR is basically promoting a brand or person using media channels. So newspapers, radio, TV, social media, whatever it may be. That's in its simplest form. But there's so many now, because of digital sort of media, there's so many different pathways that can go and platforms for you to use. So yeah, I mean, I think the definition is evolving.
Can we talk about the traditional aspect of it? Is it for example, press releases? I worked a lot in government. I've worked a lot in government, and it's very critical information. You get dates, you get the times, who's going to speak, and you plan. I used to plan my executions around that. You'd even use the press release to write your execution.
Right.
What is the purpose of that, and how do you write it? Because for me, how important is it? Because like a company may say, press release. So if you were to talk to a boss, a manager, or someone who's in charge, how important is it that they look at that and what is supposed to be in there and what should they be looking out for? Because, you know, sometimes people freestyle and it's not the best situation.
And the notes app started popping as well, so the press release came.
That's how the digital has
the screenshots go on to Twitter.
The notes app has really revolutionized reputation management. But press releases are crucial, I think, still, as traditional as they are, because it's exactly like you were saying, they give you the vital information. And I think with the media landscape that we're in at the moment, journalists and writers are very they're understaffed, they're under pressure. They're doing more with less. So if you can, as a publicist, if you can give them all the information that they need to make their jobs easier, that's essentially what a press release is supposed to do. It's supposed to give you the when, the why, the what, who, all of that stuff. And you can get quite creative with press releases these days, depending on the type of client that you have and also the type of media platform that you are approaching. So I'll give you an example. So one of my clients is a musician, right? And it gets quite tedious and quite boring to be writing the same kind of press release, like, okay, we're dropping an album, we're dropping a single, this and this and this. So sometimes what I do is that I'll actually just interview the client, and I'll write it as an interview that's ready to publish.
I definitely want to open that.
Right, exactly. Because if you think about it as a journalist, you're just like, oh my God, okay, now I don't have to go interview this person because it's done already.
So you're creating this owned media, which not only does the traditional role, but then can also be shared.
100%. It's basically like your job as a publicist is to make a journalist's job easy, but also making sure that you're securing coverage for your client in any way possible.
Simbongile, thank you for joining us. I don't think
I didn't say.
No, he did say. He did say.
You like putting me.
You didn't say the name.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, okay.
You didn't introduce her to
okay.
okay.
That's true. I just realized.
Thank you for joining us, first of all. Obviously, when it comes to PR, there's brands and there's influencers or celebrities. Is there like a preference that you have between working with either?
Yes. There's definitely a preference. I mean, when I started doing PR, I was in an agency and we were doing very corporate PR. And then I moved on to another agency that was more centered around entertainment, but again, it was like big media corporations. And then when I started working for myself, it became a lot about like personal brands, people in entertainment, that sort of thing.
Okay.
My preference is I love doing small business PR. Like that's my jam. But because PR is like it's like almost like a stock standard thing. So like doing PR for a musician and doing PR for a media corporation is not that different. You're just sort of slightly changing approaches.
Yeah.
So you can pretty much do anything, but that's my preference. Small business PR.
That's dope. And I think like obviously the language just changes between the two, and with small businesses, isn't part of the joy of it like watching it grow? Literally.
That's what I love about, because I feel like so many young people are doing amazing things via their sort of companies or entrepreneurship, whatever it may be. And I think they always think that PR is just like this thing that I need to have a huge budget for, and like, you know, I need to be doing press drops and this and this and this. And sometimes it's really just as simple as keeping media informed about your narrative or how you started your story. And it really goes a long way. So yeah.
It does.
So you mentioned kind of that, you know, going from different agencies and those different experiences that you had, you know, working for corporate brands. For me and my space and working in agencies as well, and that mix of, you know, your above the line agency and your digital and your PR or whatever, like what is the key role for the PR and now you see the advent of like influencer agencies now as well in that mix, because usually what happens is that before everything was kind of siloed, so it's like, okay, you do that, you do that, you do this. But obviously now, you know, in this digital age, everything needs to be presented like in a holistic manner, so that there's cut through, so everyone can see kind of the full journey, and that you can't differentiate between, oh, that's when PR stepped in, and that's when digital stepped in, and that's when the TV ad was made. So I just want to get from you kind of that what's the role that PR plays and influences in that mix of, you know, working with other external agencies for a brand?
So I think in that sort of basically integration you're talking about, I think it's the role of PR is kind of like where a narrative, like the PR can help you build a narrative around whatever campaign it is.
It's proactive. You don't want to be reactive, but sometimes 100%.
So like as you sort of building, like you'll have a strategist that will sort of come up with the concept or whatever it may be, and then the PR will come and say, okay, you've
giving us something to work with,
and also from like a public facing, as someone that's going to receive this information, this is how we can shape it, and this is the story that we can tell. And sometimes like when you create a campaign, like sort of in advertising, it could just be about, okay, the objectives is sales, and this is what we can do, and it can be a very creative idea. But I think PR sort of can come in and just be like, okay, but now how can we build a story around this? You know what I mean? And I think the last agency I was at sort of did that really well. Managed to sort of tell really good stories from really cool concepts that sort of came out of advertising.
Yeah, because I mean, for me, like in those experiences, what tends to happen is, you know, you end up as, let's say, the digital agency just giving PR like bullet points, like, okay, you can talk about these 4 things, or these are the 4 nuggets you can use, without understanding that in that industry or in that space, telling that story in a narrative that makes sense, they understand it better than you, right? So, you know, whatever parameters you have around the way you want to tell the story, it doesn't have to reflect that same way in that space, in the media 100%. Space, right? Because what you're trying to do is coming from a brand perspective.
I get what you're saying.
And when it's a PR thing, it's not so much like that. It's the way that you're informing the rest of the media industry around something that they should look forward to or be excited about, or how they can get involved, etc. Which that they are specialized for doing that. Whereas for a brand, it's difficult to kind of get that buy-in from consumers. It's a lot easier in a PR sense.
Since you've eaten all her words, can you tell
I was
us,
gonna
Sim, Sim, can you tell us then, in your expert opinion, how do you discern, because both of you are, like there is that intercrossing and interchanging between brand and PR management. Sometimes we look to brand and PR management. And then the follow-up question would be, what does a PR office look like? Who does it work with? Because like a lot of the time we say copy and paste. PR, explain to us how you're going to fit in. So firstly, just to circle back to the difference between PR and brand management, if there is a difference at all.
Sure.
The subtleties.
I think, there's definitely a few differences. I think with being a brand manager, I think you're looking after everything about the brand. It's like you have to, like Sanele was saying, like you have to have a holistic view. You have to have that integrated sort of mind. Whereas with like if you're coming in with PR, you can kind of just focus on one aspect. You can focus on maybe reputation. You can focus on maybe what is the story of the brand, what are our key messages, who are we trying to talk to, and yeah, I think it's PR is more streamlined, and whereas brand management is more it's a holistic view of I've never
heard a more succinct description of PR in my life.
I mean, but
Ever.
it's really that simple. But I mean, what you'll find also is that like people that have worked in PR can kind of do any job in marketing, because it's just like the job changes according to the client, according to what the scope is. It's like you almost have to be a jack of all trades. Like you actually have to be like a magazine publisher yourself. You have to be a social media manager. It's
And do you find that ignorance itself devalues PR? Because I mean, I won't lie, let me admit my own ignorance. When started working with Pumla and the Beast, he said he was in PR. There's nothing that guy couldn't do. Strategy, copywriting. I was like, my man. And he stuck with this like PR thing. So then the stereotype behind what PR is, where does that stem from? Because like,
what is the stereotype?
The stereotype for me is
what are the misconceptions?
Let me use my kind of misconception. I was introduced to PR as it's your girl B. So like now every single person, there's a specific type of PR person. I've heard lecturers say that there's a specific type of person that is more aligned to PR.
That's interesting. Okay.
So those are the kind of things. So now you look at the overwhelming kind of people. So like in terms of like the people who are able to present themselves well and then work for brands and be able to communicate what they're about. There used to be now a kind of person who did it. So it used to be the person who is outspoken and to go beat and that kind of thing can take over and then keep it cat and we're here drinking the sparkling.
Wow, yeah, that's a major misconception. Misconception.
Yeah.
Because you find all sorts of people that do PR. Like I remember when I started doing PR, I never wanted to talk on the phone. Like asking me to call journalists and like do follow-ups, I was like, you're killing me. You're actually you're killing me. I can't do this. Like I hate talking on the phone. But I was really good on email. Like I was really good at like sort of establishing a rapport. So like I would sort of text people. Like and in terms of the misconceptions, I think that sort of addresses that part. And I also think the different types of PR people that you get sort of fit different ways of doing PR. So you can get someone who's more of like a publicist, and they sort of look after like personal brands. So that's like someone you'll find like that looks after sort of celebrities and that kind of PR and sort of managing reputation. They're looking after their brands. You also get like a normal sort of stock standard account manager type PR person that is sort of dealing with more
like a suit.
It's like you're dealing with more sort of corporate clients, but I mean it
sounds like
varies.
it depends on the function and what you sell for that specific
100%,
business, and obviously you then put the specific success metrics and those kind of things.
100%. So I mean PR is so vast, but it's so simple at the same time. So it's like it's hard to sort of nail down like one particular persona for PR. It's so vast, and like I said, with the way that sort of social media and digital media is like evolving, PR is also evolving because we don't really have a choice.
Actually, on that note, it's the second time I've mentioned how digital media has forced the evolution of PR. Where do you think PR is going, and how does the digital media space affect it?
PR, there was a time where I thought PR was just like, oh no, agencies are like dead,
dying,
they're
yeah.
gone, like
There's always something being killed every year.
right. And then until I started working for myself, and I was just like, actually no, it's just about sort of adjusting and learning about the new platforms
Very
and channels
true.
that there
Yeah.
are. That's really all there is. I feel like as long as there's a channel to communicate with people,
And
PR
It'll
passionate,
always
will
exist,
always
yeah.
exist.
Yeah.
and passionate people who are talented.
Thank you. I do try. But yeah, so
Yeah.
I think digital media is forcing PR to be more creative, and I think also be an industry that is quick to change, because from the PR background I have, it's just like there's a lot of sort of people that are still sort of stuck in the traditional mindset, and okay, we're going with newspapers, we're going with
Yeah.
magazines, we're going with radio, but like what
Billboards.
about podcasts?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Clubhouse.
Clubhouse.
Yeah.
I'm telling my clients now. I'm like, guys, get on Clubhouse.
You were saying something about Clubhouse, Sanele.
Yeah, so I mean, besides the fact that people are going on at 12 p.m.
You're in
He's
the
coming
wrong
he's coming with his grandpa vibes,
the
bro.
wrong
If anyone cares to know. No, but I think on a serious note, it's one of those things where, the evolution of the way that people want to continuously find new platforms to have particular types of conversations. I always find it exciting. I mean, whether it's even existing platforms that we have that have new features and Instagram, there's a new whatever,
100%.
that people are always finding more and more ways or additional ways to communicate with each other, which I think is great because it gives people options. It gives people options in terms of the type of person I am, which is the most malleable way for me to communicate with people. Some people are Twitter people, some people are Instagram people. Now you can have Clubhouse people, you know what I mean? And I think for me, the advent of Clubhouse and obviously adopting it after, America and stuff, and looking at it in the South African context, I got excited by it because I just saw the conversations in the timeline and I was like, okay, cool, what is this? I wanted to learn about it, but it's always that thing where I'm like, if I don't know about it, I don't want to just jump in and then be like, hey guys, I'm Sanele, how's everyone doing? Like, I wanted to understand like rules of engagement, how it operates, whatever. And I think for people in the space where, whether it's digital, whether it's you're a business analyst, whether you are an entrepreneur, I think there's something for everyone in that space to learn from people. And what I'm hoping is that, because I haven't like fully immersed myself in it, but what I'm hoping for is kind of that understanding that people go in there with kind of putting their egos aside or whatever, because you know what it's like, right? Especially if you think of LinkedIn. First thing, when you look at someone sending you a connection, your title, and then now you start like,
Instead of first.
It's like,
But I think it goes down to it goes down to those rules of engagement you talked about. If there's a standard way of communicating, and if you are identified as being a dick, then you're out.
But I mean, but the thing is, it's one of those things that can breed a bit of classism, right? Because it's like, okay, cool. Why would I want to be in a room that's being run by this person, but and what I'm doing, like I'm on a high level or whatever? Because it's going to be like, okay, cool. Now, what do I think? Am I willing to open myself up to learning from everyone? And that's what I use the LinkedIn example for, is that people end up just connecting with people that they can either maybe gain something from, or they see them on the same level or trajectory in their career.
Or want to date.
Yeah, and that mentality, and that mentality for me, from a South African perspective, is also big in terms of how people change that. And that, information is available to fucking everyone, right? So someone, you can learn from anyone. And that, I just hope that, in that space of Clubhouse, you have that pure sort of interaction, engagement with people, just wanting to learn from other people, and not trying to do cloud chasing vibes like, oh, okay, cool, let me hit up this person. Well, I'm going to cloud room because it's got those people and whatever. Like, I just hope it's a lot more free than that.
It's exactly like that. Like, it's what I've enjoyed about Clubhouse is that, like, people seem to be really committed to actually wanting to have productive conversations and to learning. And that's what I find differentiates it from other social media platforms, is that like there isn't that preconceived like, oh, this is this person and they do this and this is why I should take them seriously, or this is why I shouldn't take them seriously. But I think I don't know what it is about Clubhouse, but like I feel like there's a willingness to engage on that platform. It's like people are actually super keen to like
And I love the dichotomy of Clubhouse in that sense, because like it has inclusivity and exclusivity at the same time.
Right.
It's like a live interactive podcast. Everyone can contribute, everyone can chat, and you can gain a lot from people. But also you have to get an invite. You have to have an iPhone. You have to have so many things to even get in. So it's inclusive and exclusive at the same time, which is wild. And I'd love to see where it goes. How brands, influencers, celebrities will use it for their own purposes, for PR or any other
That is going to be interesting.
It sounds like those coming to America releases. Like it's directly that, because we're excited about it. It's in America. We want to watch it, but no access. So from a PR stance, where do we stand? Like he talks about the barriers of entries, great platform, but then how would companies utilize that?
So I guess it depends on your target market, right? Who you're trying to talk to. Because if you're not trying to talk to people that are on Clubhouse, there's no point in going onto Clubhouse. But for some of my clients who sort of run businesses and are trying to be seen as sort of thought leaders or experts in sort of their field, like that's a great opportunity to sort of establish that, at least be in the conversation, be seen. Participating in a conversation, and then sort of eventually sort of start leading a conversation.
Yeah, you have to kind of allow it to grow organically.
Organically, for sure. So everything depends on your target market. So you can't sort of apply the same sort of strategy and method for every kind of client.
I want to move to the nitty-gritty. Before I do that, Ubunifu Space. Yes. How did that happen? How were you able to bring such an amazing platform to South Africa? How did it happen? And what kind of lessons did you learn? I mean, it's fantastic and just the I think I want to ask about why is it that when you transport your own language, your culture, whatever it is, your media, when it's seen over by someone else and their reactions, why does it have such a huge impact?
Sure. Interesting. Okay, I'll start from the beginning. So how that happened, actually, I didn't bring them to South Africa. So what happened was that they had announced that they were coming to South Africa.
What?
Yeah, basically. So they sort of did like a reveal and sort of, I don't know, whoever doesn't watch their channel, I don't know. But I don't know. I was like, I don't know who you are. Yeah. But obviously I was an avid watcher of the channel, and then I saw that they were coming to South Africa, and I DM'd one of the members, and we had been following each other. I can't remember why or when that happened, but I just DM'd her just to say, listen, you're coming to South Africa. If you guys feel like you need PR, call me. This is my website. This is where to find me. Whatever. And she was very quick to respond as well. She was like, oh my God, yes, okay, let's do it. And that's pretty much how that happened. And I think the lessons from it, I think for me was that media has such a strange relationship with international talent. As much as, yes, they are sort of from diaspora and they have African origins, they're still based in the UK. They grew up in the UK. Everyone knows that they're in the UK. And there's almost like this bigger reception, and it's more welcoming because I have other clients who do sort of similar things, and it's not that it was difficult to get coverage from them, but the magnitude of the kind of coverage that we were able to secure with Ubunifu was like quite interesting. I not necessarily a bad thing, but I was just like, oh, okay, this is interesting. And I think what it also taught me is that, like, if you want to do something, just shoot your shots.
Okay. That simple. I want to use DJ Lag because he's one of my. I use him as an example quite a lot because he's so successful at GOM. Before we actually gave him props, he was performing overseas and he's an internationally renowned artist. What is it about that? Like, you have to get those big ups internationally,
right?
And
you
like
have to
before,
get that cosign.
Like when the people locally know that you've made it overseas, then they pay more attention. But when the person is struggling within, it's much more difficult. What is that phenomenon about?
For me, I feel like it's a strange inferiority complex that South Africans have, and I feel like it's deep rooted. I feel like it's related to colonialism. It's related to apartheid. That's like a bigger conversation. It runs deep.
Bring some Oprah in you.
It's a very deep rooted issue, and it's like also being fed imperialism for like, I don't know, since inception. And you're constantly sort of told that, like, okay, McDonald's is great. It's amazing. Like everything that's international is amazing. It's
I mean,
great.
we wear football t-shirts of teams you don't even know.
Do you know what I mean? That's we're constantly we were fed all that kind of information and that kind of perception since birth.
Yeah.
And it's as soon as sort of South Africans or Africans do things on a global scale or they're doing really well, it's almost just like, okay, but like, is this person international? Like, was there an international stamp of approval? I'll give you an example. A designer brought up a conversation on Twitter where he was asking like, oh, do we have brands that are on the same caliber as your
I remember.
I think I
Louis
saw
I
that.
remember,
And,
bruh.
like, do
It
we
backfired
have
in a nice way, though.
Yeah, it was like, he was just like, but I feel like we just don't have global brands in South Africa that are on the
Bruh.
same caliber. I was just like,
Where have you been living, dude? Like, honestly, like, the internet is free.
Perception.
right? I was just like, there are so many. There's like
Yeah.
Duma who's doing amazing,
Exactly.
but it's just like,
Yeah.
do we have to be like a Louis Vuitton in order for us to feel like
I mean,
we
Ashton
have?
Kutcher's got a whole the Veldskuna now because they're being worn by Ashton Kutcher. They're an American thing. Like,
Do you understand? So it's weird and it's hard to get to the bottom of it because I feel like it's a very hectic
It is.
psychological thing.
Actually, I wanted to, like, similar to Wang's question about Ubunifu Space. Obviously, I want to also learn or find out the lessons that you learned and the experience that you had working at Threaded Man. I don't want to talk about the models. But how was that? What did you learn in that experience?
Sure. So working at the Threaded Man, how it started was I was working as an intern at the agency that housed the Threaded Man. So
Okay.
it was almost just like, what do you call these things when
affiliate.
No, when small businesses incubated. So
Oh,
it was being
Incubator.
so it was being incubated by this marketing agency, and I sort of started there as an intern. I'd obviously known Siya from Cape Town, and I was doing like basically just like social media management, just as an intern. It's like whatever you do, kind of like whatever. And
Good experience.
That's what interns do.
Yeah.
Exactly,
Literally.
you do everything.
Chinalytics.
Yeah, and then sort of Siya was telling me about like his plans to sort of just like leave the incubation.
Okay.
And one day, it's like I think one thing I really regret in my career is, so he left the company, the marketing agency, and I literally quit the same day. Like no plan, nothing.
Passion!
Like, let's go!
Passion! Let's
I was
go!
like-
It's a leap of faith.
Literally my first job, and I wrote them an email. I was just like, I resigned. I was just like, what am I doing? So that's how that started, and then I went over to Threaded Man, and he had secured sort of funding from a bank, and it was like everything was great, everything was lovely. I think what that experience taught me is that you have to jump in the deep end. Like I went from being an intern to being an operations manager. I don't think I understood at the time.
What is operations? I still don't.
Dude,
I don't think I
I'm putting it
understood at
together
the
still.
time, but I think because I was someone that was like so admin orientated, I just picked things
Gravitated
up
to it,
like very quickly. It was a lot of different things. It exposed me to so much, to so many people. I was doing sort of styling at one point, and then the next day I was like doing the books. And,
Exciting.
do you know what I mean? It was very exciting. It was a
wearing
great
many
time.
hats, yeah.
Many hats. It was a great time
Just for
until
any,
it wasn't.
just for any
All
of,
good things do come to an end.
hey, they have to, man. Just for any of our youngins listening there who might want to learn from you, any parents as well, who anyone really
Who don't know
might
what we
be
do.
considering PR itself, because I love how you have so much certainty behind what you do and how you do it, and there's a specific level, because you may find that the value of it is not standard, and because the standards are different, as you mentioned, people may work differently. You need to make sure that you build a certain kind of reputation and system. So what would your advice be to people out there who'd like to study PR, who'd like to work there? What should they think about with regards to what they study and what they invest in?
PR should not be your backup plan. You will work very hard. I think it's again, you wear a lot of different hats, you do a lot of different things. I think if you are a person that is sort of very passionate about sort of communicating but not necessarily being the communicator,
Okay.
I think it could sort of be a great path for you to explore. I think if you have a general interest in media as well, so it's sort of like I used to be like hectic with magazines. I used to gobble them up, like read everything. So if you sort of enjoy sort of content in general, and you have to be creative as well. You have to have a creative flair, but you know that's not all it is. I think to parents, I don't know if you have kids that want to study PR. I think just let them do it. It's a very solid career, and it's going to be around for a very long time. I think it's just about just making sure that you're constantly learning as well. Keep up with sort of what's going on in all kinds of communications. You know, don't think that it's just sort of traditional or it's just digital. I think you have to sort of be well versed.
Cool. So I just want to talk about kind of the rise of the influencer industry to the point where obviously you have dedicated influencer agencies, as in like their core business is just to work on influencer stuff, which is such a massive evolution from where we started, where that stuff either stayed within brand teams or stayed within traditional sort of agencies, that now there's kind of this breakaway part of it now where you have influencer agencies. Like, even for me, my first title, my first role at my current place of employment was influencer strategist. And if I had to tell someone that 3 years ago, they'd be like, what? That's an actual position. And I'm like, yeah, dude. So I think also within when you look at you know, a lot of these big sort of corporate and FMCG organizations, especially the global ones, now they've termed that the whole industry of influence as channels of influence. So it involves publishers, it involves, you know, your magazines, influencers themselves, any form of media which can create influence for brands is all housed in the same place. And it's such a interesting space to be. So I just want to get your perspective on kind of how that evolution has come about, and maybe where we can see it kind of evolving even further.
I feel like, yes, there's been evolution, but on the topic of influencer agencies specifically, my feeling is that I think everyone saw sort of this new
shiny thing,
it was like it's a new shiny thing, like ooh,
what is it?
Right. And I think a lot of the influencer agencies, or agencies that purported to sort of facilitate relationships between influencers and brands, they got in it with like, okay, there's money to be made.
I'm thinking how.
Right, there's money to be made. And it's like, this looks easy. It's like, all you have to do is like, what? You're calling some people on social media.
Get a celebrity with 10,000 followers.
Dude, like,
and it was difficult to quantify at the time as to exactly how. So people just slapped on crazy numbers.
But they have 1 million followers. Why did we get 5 RTs?
There was so much like thumb sucking going on. It was just like crazy time. And I feel like it's about maybe a decade on, I think, at least in South Africa. And I feel like only sort of in the past 3 years, maybe I feel like the jig has been up now. Like it's just, it's not that simple, and there's like real thoughts and strategy that needs to sort of go into it. And I think I sort of feel so vexed by the fact that like the agencies that have sort of purported to be influencer agencies on behalf of brands and sort of managing influencers as well have done very little to grow the industry and to grow resources and learning. And it's just like, I feel
tools.
like
it feels like
we're having the same conversations that we had 5 years ago, and I'm just like, I don't understand.
It's a Wild West.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, why are we still talking about like, oh, you know, sometimes it's not just about followers, it's about engagement. I was like, yes,
we've been talking about that same
tiers,
like how do we tier influencers?
Like we've been talking about this for years.
Like the whole the water, like you got it everywhere. It was everywhere, but where's the money, guys? And you got, like, for me, I felt like what you're saying, it's damning also. I think there's a big responsibility for brands. You get a CEO now who says, well, we got the water guys on, our sales after 2 weeks didn't 2 weeks.
on top of the fact that there's I hate to use this word pandemic because there's a real one. But the one in this space is where brand teams want to be influencers. That's the absolute worst. So they want to assimilate themselves, and what happens is that it creates this like revolving issue of
representation.
There's like this, this almost boys club where you find particular influencer agencies build these relations with people, and they like I've had an influencer agency, and I've wanted like a proposal from them to like give me influencer suggestions with a strategy for different brands that have different personalities, different tone, different target markets, and they're sending me the same names.
Yeah, there's
No,
also
no, they make sense for this one. And
In
I'm like, they
Mafia.
don't.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
don't. But you are probably getting a little, brown envelope
Hey.
on the
Of
side
course,
under the
of
table
course.
to push their agenda,
Ah.
particularly, and you don't really care about
Simnanza
what it
Zindo.
looks like for the what?
Sim.
Come
Not
on.
me.
But
But
there's going to be an open the industry. There has to be an open the industry chat about that.
I don't think, to be fair, I
It's
don't
already
think,
open.
Exactly. I don't think
Come
it needs
on.
to be opened anymore. It's a
Yeah.
matter of
Honestly.
it's especially the discovery process when it
Mm.
comes to choosing influencers.
Mm.
It's about going beyond the people that you follow on Instagram.
exactly.
Like, come on, like let's actually, who are the people that are really creating conversation?
I mean, I want to see
influence,
subcultures
engagement.
intertwining.
Yeah, because there's no real
Yeah.
there's not enough attention on like thought leadership, right?
Mm.
So in terms of like an influencer,
Mhm.
like because at the end of the day, right, I've always had this issue is that there is two parts. There, your ability to influence is it's decided outside of whatever your skill set is, right? Because you can be influential because in your circle it can be whether you have connections, whether you wear the right clothes, whether you go to the
Yeah.
right places, whatever. Which for a lot of people that's out of touch of their own scope and their own life. So
who they are.
like
yeah.
you can't so basically you can be an influencer if you have the money to be an influencer.
Right.
If that makes sense,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
you're creating this lifestyle of yourself,
Perception.
a perception of
Mm.
yourself, and you need to have certain access to do that. But then for me, that's not real influence. And the reason I'm bringing it up is because over the last, let's say maybe 2-3 years, the amount of people who DM me on Instagram and they're like, I want to be an influencer, teach me how to be an influencer. I can't teach you how to be influential. It's
Can
not something that you can teach.
Yeah.
You can add parts of it where
Yeah.
you can highlight aspects which get certain attention. And,
What are
and
the
you can-
metrics do you look
and
for?
you can have an opinion on it that's based on the fact that you understand that thing very well.
Right.
But other than that, like you can't make someone influence. There's no book, you can't read it, you can't go to school for
Sim,
it.
can we talk about
And
this? 'Cause
is
it's-
it influence if you can teach it even at that point?
people,
But I also
people-
think everybody's influential in different ways,
Yeah, I've
on
heard that
different
before.
scales.
I've heard
It's
that
true.
before.
It's
I've
like
heard that
if
before.
we're sitting here, you guys I could have walked in, you guys can be like, oh my gosh, those sneakers are so cool. Like,
Yeah.
where'd you get them? Next, you are going to go buy them,
Mm.
right? So I think
They actually are dope, by the way.
They're right.
No
but-
outfits.
but yeah, I feel like everyone is influential. It's just on a different scale, at different levels. You influence your family, for instance.
Very true. Like I
Right.
mean, a perfect example I like to use is, for example, the grandmother who buys the DSTV. They buy it because they saw their neighbor. They see dishes
Do you know
around
what I
their
mean?
house.
Exactly.
So when we talk about visibility, because people are stringing themselves high to stay visible, they're going to taking these shots and
they're doing a
shoots.
lot. Mhm.
What's your advice between like what really impacts a brand to say I'm going with that person? Is it that aesthetic and the high numbers on Instagram? Is it a combination? What is the substance that really ticks that box? I know it's a difficult question, but
Yeah.
yeah.
I think it depends on what the brand is trying to do, and who they're trying to talk to. Are they just trying to sort of raise awareness about something, or they actually want people to talk about something? I think as an influencer, my only advice is or content creator, just sort of build your online persona or personality just based on who you are. Just be you.
And
That
organic,
is
yeah.
more than enough. And I think if you're wanting to go into an influencer career, is a bit tricky. I think it's easier to want to sort of go into content creation. That's like at least something
Good
you're
idea,
like, okay,
yeah.
Yeah.
you want to create some
Got
kind
a
of
skill behind
content. You
yourself.
wanna do something. You wanna say something.
Okay.
I think that's maybe a better vehicle to
Okay.
go into it with. But to go into it like Sanele was saying, when people are DMing you to be like, I want to be an influencer, it doesn't really work that way.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
So I think just
Mm.
be you, the best version of yourself that you can be. And I think also try to connect with the kind of people that you see doing what you want to do.
Mm.
So build it, even if it's just to be like, hey, love what you're doing, keep it up, whatever.
Yeah. And also harnessing your own community, no matter how
Exactly.
small it is, right? So that thing of like,
Engage
even
with
if you
them.
have like 200 followers, like respond to people, speak
Talk
to
to
them,
people, yeah,
understand
Engage,
them,
yeah.
because then that stretches and goes further. What happens now, you get people who are like on 100,000, 200,000, and then you just look at their comments and there's no replies to them. I'm like,
Right.
but this is your community. These people
Yeah.
have a vested interest in you.
Mm.
They follow you. Maybe you've made them purchase something. Maybe you've made them be brave enough to speak out about whatever it is. And now you're not because they are paying you.
Yeah.
They are giving you a living, right? So at the end of the day, having that meaningful engagement with them is something that I think people seem to neglect now. And it's, you know, when I notice it, like for instance with Shawnee, right?
Yeah.
I promise you, if you go on Shawnee's
Yo,
Instagram,
yeah, she's
she
great at
replies to
responding.
every
And it
single
works.
comment.
Like they really,
And
really
there's a
feel that
community,
she's
and I know we
approachable.
like, it feels weird because we just kind of just went into this lifestyle of stan culture and whatever. But there's a special part of it where you're building a community which is real.
Yeah.
And those are the people that, you know, I would like to think, even when things are not going so great and maybe you've gone a couple of months without a campaign, they're still for you. Do you know what I mean? And they're not going to just drop you because, this person's not on TV ads, this person, you haven't seen them work with Adidas yet, or whatever it may be. They will still sort of have your back. And I think people neglect that a lot.
Yeah, and I feel like just to add on to that, like community is basically like your property as a content creator, as your influencer, because that's what brands are buying
They
into.
want,
That's what they want.
access
They
to
want
that.
your audience. They want, do you know what I mean? And I feel like you have to harness that. You have to engage. You have to sort of treat those people like they're literally like,
Sorry, I was laughing because of the YouTubers. SA YouTubers apparently have that follow me culture. Once they hit 2,000, 3,000, hey Nina, don't tell me when to shoot.
Yeah, the comment sections get lit.
So what happens like between
I would
that?
beg to differ. I would say YouTubers in South Africa are actually doing so well to harness their communities and sort of get those people to you know, travel with them to different platforms. I think YouTubers are doing really well at that. And I think sometimes it's like, as much as like, yes, like engaging by a comment section is very important, sometimes what YouTubers do is that they respond to their comment section on it, like the next video. So it's just like you still feel like, you know, you're getting sort of some sort of engagement.
Reciprocal,
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't know. I think they're doing great.
All right, cool.
I loved how you made that differentiation between like influencing, when we were talking about that, and content creation, because that's a space that I'm seeing that a lot more in bios now than
Content
influencers. Because the thing also with content creation is that if you create content, you're automatically a content creator. You can't just come out the gate and be, I'm an influencer.
Exactly.
Who told you that?
Exactly.
But anyway, I don't want to go. But anyway, that's besides the point. You spoke about the leap of faith that you took earlier in your career. I want to talk about the other one, Melenial. How did that start?
Shout out, sister.
How's that experience been?
Sure. So Melenial started in varsity.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's the longest story. But my group of friends and I decided to start a blog.
Okay.
And we had called it Urban Mavericks at the time. And we were just like, we want to like create content because we weren't seeing any content that was being created for our sort of age group, our demographic, like young black girls. Everything was either like you're getting your true loves, where it's like a bit higher, or it's just like very, very young. So there was nothing in between. So we're just like, oh, you know, let's do it ourselves. So it started as a blog, and then I think by third year there was like from 4 it went to like 2 people that were like super serious about it. And we thought we were so serious. We had like some meeting. We were like, okay guys, we just feel like some of us are more committed than others.
I'm gonna cut people
so
off.
I just feel like, you know, I feel like just say now if you like want to come, like, you know what I mean? Because we were like, it's so weird. Like we were like going to like brand events and stuff, and it was like the wildest thing. It was weird. And so from that, then the 2 remaining committed people, we decided to sort of change our name, and sort of we gave like our blog a rebrand, and we called it Melenial, and we registered the company. So it started as a blog, and then when I started sort of wanting to go into more freelance work, I was just like, oh, okay, well, I have a business. I can just, you know,
the vehicle.
use the business. And it was easier to sort of get onto sort of vendor systems and all of that stuff. And yeah, that's basically how it happened.
That's so dope.
And I just decided to sort of carry the name through and just sort of change it.
And that's a play on the word melanin and millennial. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
so it's like that's what we were just like. We were like for like millennials, and it's like for melanated like people. Like we thought we were so.
I think I did see that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think
Kudos for that, though.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for discerning between what PR really is, what it isn't, how it's evolved, where it's going, your company as well. Can you maybe share a few of your contacts for our viewers out there?
Can I just say one thing before I get to that? I think what I've been wanting to say, but I think I keep forgetting and getting distracted. I think as someone, if you feel like, you know, you're a brand or you run a business, don't forget that your own sort of platforms are channels as well. I think sort of with the way that sort of digital is going, brands sort of have more control over sort of how their messaging sort of comes out. So you don't really have to rely on a secondary sort of magazine or whatever it may be. You can actually curate the content on your own platforms. I just wanted to say that.
Right? You're wasting money.
Yeah, it's like sometimes you don't need PR. Sometimes you just need a social media manager, you know? But in terms of where you can find me, my name, Simbongile _in everywhere. But please don't expect me to be smart and clever all the time on Twitter. That is
for jokes.
Yeah, it's like literally I'm on Twitter for jokes. But if you like connect with me on LinkedIn, you know, my email is everywhere across my platforms, and I'm super open to receiving, I don't know, questions, briefs. But yeah, get in touch.
Yeah, indeed, more and more of those briefs. And as we mentioned, we would love to hear your comments as well with regards to what you'd like to see on the show or things that you have seen. And follow us on Twitter, social media, Facebook, LinkedIn. We've just got a new LinkedIn page. Shout out to everyone who's followed. It's really building into something that is quite, I would say, valuable for quite a lot of people. And insightful. That's what we've always hoped to be. But we do hope to have a lot of fun again. Once again, thank you for joining us.
Thank you guys. This is so fun.
Yeah. And don't forget to listen as well on Spotify, on iTunes, and on Buzzsprout.
Please bully them to get Clubhouse. To do rooms. Please bully them in the comments.
We're coming.
Call me the gas on it goes with my footwear. Got my little chain on YouTube and drip on a daily, you know that I do that. Bitch, I clear you do it. Call me the gas on it goes with my footwear. Got my little chain on YouTube and drip on a daily, you know that I do that.